John Briganti, you obviously are no wuss. You are a Bruho, that's for certain. And you got your comeuppance. You made certain I suffered and suffered well, and blamed everybody but myself because I did not know the link between my suffering and myself was you. I wronged you in some past lifetime, hundreds of years ago, for spite. And that's what made you go nuts, with revenge on your heart, which I hope has come to an end now that you've been exposed. I can only surmise that my time of suffering is over, because that's usually the way it works, according to Charlie Lutz. Our karma, when it's karma, is our blind spot as well. And not until the karma has been spent do we come into any awareness as to what it was all about. Well, now I know. So you came back as my illegitimate bastard son, thinking yourself to be prince of the realm, justified in acquiring the status of the King of England to replace his mother, the Queen, upon her death. But it wasn't meant to be because you were not Prince of the Realm. So, you betrayed your country and solicited the assistance of the Spaniards to attempt again a second invasion of England, only this time not a frontal attack, but a side attack through you and your minion, through Europe, through France, all the way up to Norway, and then attack England from Norway unexpectedly. And I was there as a double incarnation to foil your attempt, because England had already acquired the spiritual mantle from Spain during the Armada defeat, and so it was not meant to be that we should lose it backwards, because the spiritual mantle, according to Charlie Lutz, always travels westward towards the setting sun. It'll be in Asia next when we lose it, and I think we already have or are about to. Anywho, that's another story. So you killed your mother through grief, indirectly, by killing off one of her many illegitimate bastard sons. Your mother, Queen of England, Elizabeth I. And when I found out what I had done without my knowledge but with my consent, I went and committed suicide by dry fasting and praying until I died. It's why the historians say, oh, she took ill suddenly and died. No. She got a chance to pray for forgiveness for killing her own son, putting him in the Tower of London first for a year and then having him beheaded. Anyway. But because I foiled your attempt, Christopher Marlowe foiled your attempt using actors of all people, a bloodless shutdown of your plans to jockey for better position in English court now ruled by King James, when you thought it should have been you. So you went and put poison in my wine and had me killed directly when you found out who the perpetrator was, who this mysterious man of many nom de plumes, many disguises. As I worked for my queen, who gave me a private order, a private casting call, to be her private spy, answerable only to her, So I died twice, my fake death in the streets of London, and then my real death at your hand. But it wasn't over, was it? I had to insult you again without realizing I was going to be doing that, by, in your eyes, in your interpretation, bringing down the reputation of the TM movement by a notch or two, and getting unfair treatment, in your opinion, what I did not deserve, by being exonerated or forgiven too readily by Maharishi. And so, as vigilante justice, you went about your business. Judge, jury, and executioner, as Charlie would say. Had my son taken from me, had my trust money taken from me, 2 permanent damages that cannot be rectified, at least not directly. And not wishing to take me to death this time, but just keeping me alive to suffer. And the words of my brother that you worked through, getting joy out of seeing me suffer. Well, I hope it's over. I hope it's over. Maybe I forgot to mention, or maybe I overlooked it, or maybe I'm just too nice. But it makes more efficient sense if John Briganti did not work alone, but teamed up with a double agent. I'll let you guess who that is, but it makes sense because then they could work as a team, and I gave the hint away already, in that they both said the same thing, or convey the same thought of getting pleasure out of seeing me suffer. Something like that does not happen by mere chance. And the influence that John Briganti has had is only over people who are susceptible, vulnerable, such as my trustee, and myself, for that matter, making stupid mistakes. But anybody shrewd, crafty, blah, 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 is not going to leave themselves open to that kind of shortcoming. They're going to make certain that their defense strategy is in place first before they consider anything offensive. And there's only one other person besides John who would think that way. So I'll leave it up to you to guess who it is, but it's becoming obvious that he didn't work alone. And that's all I need to say. It has come to my attention that John Briganti is not the person I thought he was, inasmuch as he's not the person from the past lifetime who has a grudge. It's actually my brother, Bruce Knopf. But Bruce hired Briganti as an accomplice to, since John Briganti had known me for a little while and could be used as a Bruho for additional leverage, shall we say, to undermine my weakness and make me appear to be a fool, and a paranoid fool at that. When all the while, it was my brother who needed very badly to disrupt the life of his younger brother. So sorry, John, for pinning the tail on the wrong donkey's ass. But you probably don't feel that great for having helped out my brother. You're probably sorry you did, and you probably might have even, not probably, but might have even suspected that the good times would not last forever. Something maybe my brother wouldn't appreciate, since he's not a meditator. Well, he is a meditator, but let's just say it was a long time since his last checking, much less meditation. For his credit, well, no, I'm not going to exonerate my brother by, because it's basically intention. And if intention should carry over from one lifetime to the next unfulfilled, then that's some quite heavy-duty intention. And be given the means to fulfill that intention. That's also quite a incentive, I guess, to go along and fulfill what could not be fulfilled in the past, or actually was. That's why some memories do not die a quiet death. They just don't die. They just linger on and on. So I suspect my brother will be resentful for being exposed and hold a grudge, this time a new one, for being exposed, because my brother probably just assumes that he deserves to continue to operate in secret and tell different stories to different people to keep everybody off guard. He's been doing that for quite some time. Anyway, so sorry, John, it's not you. But it is you, because you were engaged and you got involved. You're just not the mastermind. You're the underling. Oh well. In fact, I can see the possibility that John Briganti was never directly involved doing anything to me. That he may simply have been, an informant of sorts, but more significantly, a teacher of special techniques to Bruce, my brother, such as thought projection, making my brother appear to be powerful, which is what he claimed at one point. Some unknown personage claimed to be all-powerful and invincible, and there was no way to stop him, to stop himself. And I always assumed that was my brother because it had his signature, but it didn't make sense that he would be involved in communicating in that manner, that kind of message. But if he employed John Briganti as a tutor of sorts, then it does still make John, appear to be not faithful to keeping private such matters, or purporting to be a teacher beyond teaching TM, which kind of puts his stance as a teacher in jeopardy, which I suspected, but I can see now how it would be much more obviously or more clear-cut a disruption of his stance as a TM teacher. It would make sense that Bruce did everything himself because he just hired people to help him. And I always knew this because he's incapable of logical thinking. All he's capable of is fear and jealousy, thinking on the basis of emotions, not on the basis of reasoning, but calling it reasoning. I know he hired attorneys to train him how to do battle with me and charged the trust to pay for those attorneys. But I never in my wildest dreams would suspect that he could hire a TM teacher to assist him by teaching him a few powerful cities. Now it's starting to make more sense because it has my brother's character, his signature, but power that he would normally not possess, leverage of a subtle nature, and that tended to confuse me and throw me off track because I couldn't. When this first communication happened on the mental plane was in the days when I was still living in L.A. and undergoing the loss of my mother's home. I had already undergone the loss of my son, and while I was taking a bus to and fro the San Fernando Valley Civic Center, the courthouse, they had a room in there, a division having to do with abuse. Victims of abuse could go there for assistance. And getting on the bus, this thought came to mind that there's no way I can succeed. I'm the person in question claimed to be all-powerful and invincible, and it just didn't make any sense that anybody in their right mind with that kind of power to project thought would make such claims. It was out of character. That's because he acquired those talents, so we say, in a ruthless manner from a willing TM teacher, now that I can see in hindsight. This is not good. This is ugly. This is damn ugly. Because then Bruce can claim conformity to standard methods of working through the material plane, all the while in secret doing things on the mental plane, whose purpose was to disrupt and mislead. So maybe he never had a conversation with Donna Bogdanovich. It was all mental, a mental conversation to persuade her to do what she ended up doing. And then how can anybody prove it, right? There's no physical proof. You're dealing with a man's thoughts and intentions with nothing to prove it. And so it would be very easy to claim differently, except he involved John Briganti. And that's the key element, the Achilles heel, shall we say, of exposure that makes it possible to expose Bruce, but only with a good deal of thought and time to think it through. Well, I didn't take much time, only a day or two, but not instantaneously. But gradually by degree, or sequentially, I should say, sequentially by degree, because it's not that gradual, but it's not immediate. It is by degree. So this all now starts to make a lot of sense, what formerly did not make any sense whatsoever. And what it does, basically, is it leaves a trail of proof. Even though Bruce himself is not the epitome of proof, because he'll deny it, but he left himself a trail of individuals who could vouch, or one individual who could vouch for how involved Bruce got in his endeavor to take me down several notches and not stop until he got complete satisfaction, namely my incarceration in a mental institution, which he couldn't get me to do voluntarily. He even asked me, and I thought it was so bizarre. So bizarre for anybody to ask that rationally, openly, to anyone. Please go commit yourself, voluntarily commit yourself to an insane asylum. It makes no sense. It makes no sense, but it would cover for him. Basically, he was attempting to hire me to cover for him his insanity by falsely admitting to it myself. Since Mother had already started the ball of wax rolling, simply to get me benefits for no other reason, well, to shut me up, that's true, and give me the lack of credibility, that's true. But not with this kind of evil intention. So it must have been karma that Bruce was born to this family and of this mother, because our mother, because it stands to reason that it was just like a foregone conclusion of resentment carried over from the past that was never fully satisfied. So now he got his satisfaction, but to walk away scot-free, easy peasy, without any liability of exposure? No. That was one thing he didn't count on losing as well, or losing at all. He counted on losing nothing and getting complete satisfaction. But that's the interesting part about the difference between the dream world, which psychiatrists call delusional thinking. If you start if you can't tell the difference between a dream and reality, that's the difference between the dream world and the real world. The real world, you're actually dealing with other people. Dream world, you're only dealing with your own projections, which can be anything. Most of the time, I dare say, very few people actually do astral projection in their dreams. Most of the time, most people, it's just a projection of their own mind to satisfy it, to give them therapy for the stresses of the day. And to, through that, allow the higher self to get through to the person, but through the language of emotion, not through the language of thought or speech. It would be a rare individual who can make contact with their higher self in dreams. And that I did do while I was at MIU. Or I should say it was the other way around. My higher self got through to me. But merely as an exposure person, in a sense. Exposing mysteries by pointing out what to put my attention on. Here, look at this. And I remember now. And then describing it. This is the nature of this. This is the nature of this. This is the nature of this. Pointing my attention at various things and describing their inner nature so that it would no longer be a mystery. And that's a dialogue. And that's an honest-to-God dialogue of assistance, so that mysteries do not remain mysteries forever. But it's nothing like what Bruce has done. Anyway. In fact, I'll go so far as to speculate that John Briganti never taught my brother anything. He might have just led him to what books to read and get it on his own. You know, like starting with Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and then fanning out from there to other books that might exist that have various techniques in their described in their text, so that Bruce would have the karma of getting it himself and choosing to use it for his own purposes. Whether or not my brother just bothered to meditate, you know, he did admit to me a long time earlier, before any of this shenanigans occurred, that he didn't need TM, he could get it from elsewhere. And that may be prophetic, in that he was never interested in what TM has to offer. He just wants power. And that would be in keeping with his character, carried over from the past as my illegitimate bastard son, who thought he was Prince of the Realm of England, simply vying for more power, any which way he can get it. if it was done inefficiently 400 years ago, now that we know more about the world and the world of yoga and powers, it could be that he's simply carrying on where he left off, picking up where he left off, but doing it in a different manner, getting different results. How many people did my brother hire, even before John Briganti, to help him out or solicit their assistance? I can see now that it goes back a ways. 2 of my roommates are very strong possibilities, because one openly admitted to wanting to take over and push me aside, while the other one just went ahead and did it and was openly conferring with my brother to do just that. But when I think about it, he may have entered my home or come to me to rent a room specifically so that my brother would have an inside source of information as to what's going on, because he had no access, no inside access. So he may have gotten a convicted felon to be one of his first accomplices. The mother of my son's prior boyfriend. But it didn't start there. Actually, no. The other guy would have been before him, the former cocaine addict. If he was, I don't know. But definitely Alfredo Perez, because it was so obvious. I mean, it was like they didn't even try to hide it, that they had a going concern. And it always made me curious when I first met this guy, when he came for an interview, how, well, he is definitely a sociopath in that he could manipulate even the police. So it's really makes me wonder, how far back my brother solicited assistance from other people to extend his power, extend his limited range of power. So this is getting to be very intriguing, just peering into this. It's got so many layers of intrigue. It's enough to make an Agatha Christie novel out of it, or something similar. Bruce's network of spies is an intriguing topic in itself. My ex, Samantha Feinberg, used to tell me that how she was so intrigued and tickled that John Briganti gave her so much special treatment and treated her like a meditator even though she wasn't, creating a certain amount of confusion and consternation among the meditators coming to potluck on Friday night. But what if my brother hired, or what if Samantha Feinberg was being used as an informant of sorts without her knowledge or consent through John to Bruce, so that Bruce could have inside information as to what was going on, because he didn't have anybody in there at the time to act on his behalf as an informant. He certainly didn't have my support, because I ridiculed him with sarcasm, and he hated that. My brother really, truly hated to be exposed to the limited degree of exposure that I was capable of performing at that time, because I didn't really understand too much. All I could see was what my brother presented to me in my conversations with him. And the vulnerability my brother was toward sarcasm, because he really can't stand truth if it points its finger at himself. And sarcasm is a tool of doing just that, is pointing truths out about people to people so that it's infallible to accept it, because it's what does it do? It's uncanny how it does it. Let's put it that way. It's very rigorous in exposing people who want to hide their little foibles or plans of deceit, or whatever you want to call them. Anyway, boy, this just keeps going on and on in my head. Anyway, I can't seem to stop thinking now. Now I'm making all these connections, and it starts to look like a very intriguing picture of what has transpired over the last, 14 years or more. It would be a lie to assume my brother wants me to get off the streets. He wants me to stay right where I am, because it's even easier than trying to get me into a mental institution. This little business of him not being able to get satisfaction from my trustee to comply or assist my brother, even that is suspect. In fact, just about everything is suspect, because it starts looking like my brother has not a vast network of people who have assisted him, but a network nonetheless. And to think that he wants the best for me that would be bullshit. He wants what's best for himself, and that is to keep me sequestered. It all goes with taking advantage of what my mother literally my mother gave my brother more than she gave me. She gave him power over me, in which the little welfare crumbs that I get is paltry by contrast to the power that she's given. I mean, it's literally, it's made to look like conservatorship because of the quantity or the intensity, the scope of power that my mother gave him, and I gave him as well, very naively, by handing over a piece of paper. He just took off with that. So it seems like everything has been going in his favor, in the direction of his desires. And if he got anything out of TM, this seems to be the extent of it, was to get leverage over me. My brother doesn't want to admit to having fears of various sorts that don't include me, but I'm being used to cover them up. And it's been so easy. I've just played right into his hand so that he can deny that he is basically scared shitless. What? I do not know, and it doesn't matter. The fact is, that's the driving force behind my brother's actions. And it has gotten so convoluted and so complicated that it's no longer obvious. He no longer shows his hand all the time like a very poor poker player, poorly skilled in the artistry of playing poker. He's way beyond that. He's got the artistry now down pat of how to hide behind various facades to assist him in getting his goals achieved. And I'm sure he doesn't exercise it with me alone. It's just, shall we say, more devious or more deceitful than he might otherwise have exercised with anyone else. Because I'm family, and I think family scares him. And I don't think it's me personal. It's probably some relationship error between him and Big Daddy-O, our mutual father, which I usually don't consider to be mutual because I never knew the guy and he never had a chance to interact with me, really. So he had more opportunity with my brother than anyone else, and my mother, than with me. So it's hard for me to consider him my father, in name practically only. This next little subtext is not so little. The reason why Bruce claimed he was all-powerful and invincible and could not be stopped when Samantha and I were being kicked out of my mother's home after our son was already taken is because he's not a Bruho after all. Yeah, he knows a few techniques, great, but he's not a Bruho. He's not the source of the power that he refers to. He's relying on somebody else, and it's not John Briganti. It's government. But government can't do these things. It has to be outsourced to any individual who might have personal motivation to see the same or to agree with the same results that government would like to see imposed to fulfill their policy, their composition of various policies. So they look for individuals as their first choice who might already agree with them and carry out their dirty work for them as an outsource, as a kind of independent contractor. So with that kind of backing, it's very easy to think oneself invincible. In Russia back in the day, maybe it's still true, I don't know, if you were a dissident, such as Alexander Solzhenitsyn, you were sent out to the Gulag. Here in America, it's far simpler. You're put out on the street. Look what happened to Hutchinson. Evicted from his apartments twice, and now he lives on the street. He's mobile. What harm can he do to the vested interests who stand behind maintaining the status quo? And government is not the last word on the subject. It's not so all-powerful. It has a lot of credibility as a depository of authority, but it has somebody behind them. Commercial interests. For in the words of an electrical engineer in core, if it is not commercially viable, it is not a scientific fact. Well, if it's not commercially viable, it's not government approved either, for that matter. So government is just a tool, a henchman, so to speak, among many layers of henchmen, taking orders from above when they're all being manipulated by commercial interests. And who knows who stands behind them? So in any case, this is a very thick and complicated, sordid melodrama that only makes sense when it's assessed to be more complicated than what it is designed to appear to be on the surface at first glance. It's so easy to blame this individual or that individual, but we're all supporting the commerce, and we don't have much choice but to do so. Yet we support it along with its policies, and the rest is the result of a snowball effect. So, where can there be any justice when injustice is filtered through so many layers of intrigue that it would be impossible to unravel it and try to solve it, because it would involve everyone. How do you get any justice from that situation? You can't. In seeking the source of all the evil that we confront in our world, how can you deal with it if all you can hope for is, if the best that you can hope for is to deal with scapegoats who are set out to be blamed as maybe the final leg of a series of layers of henchmen, but they're just peons, they're just pawns in a chess game in which every layer of intrigue further removed from the actual circumstance of the evil is just more further removed from any accountability. And it doesn't stop because it keeps getting more and more intriguing with more and more layers of masterminds, behind masterminds, layer upon layer. There's no way you can get at it to fix it, to get any justice out of it. It would be impossible.